Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our third lecture in the Entrepreneur Leadership Series. Last week we had Dan Clark. How did you like Dan? Great. Okay, every speaker is going to give you a few gems that you can use in your life and your career. And I want three brave people to come up here and tell us one thing you learned from Dan Clark that you think will impact your career or your life. Okay? So three. Okay, come on up. It's Michael. So just one thing that stood out that you'll never forget.
Okay. He said a couple times to pay attention or to meet the person sitting next to you. And, you know, there might be some magic there. Anyway, I followed that advice and already towards a nonprofit organization I've started, we're having a connection with this other person, and it's working out great. It just was simple advice, and it's going to change a lot of things. So anyway, hopefully do that yourselves today.
Okay. Michael, for being brave, we have a gift for you. If you go over to Bailey right there, she's going to give you a book for coming up here. Okay? So now that you know there's a prize, who wants to be second? Randy, we'll get you next time. Okay, yeah, come on up. One thing Dan Clark taught you. And tell us your name.
My name's Wes Colsty. I really liked he talked about his one friend that went into the NFL, and he said, don't confuse what you do with who you are. And he kind of talked about letting your music out and really doing what you have a passion for.
Great, and she's got a book for you. Okay, one more. Come on up. So part of entrepreneurship is having courage and coming up here, and we're going to try to reward you for coming up here each week, okay? What's your name?
I'm Brennan. So I liked how he said that there's no financial crisis, there's just an idea crisis, especially in entrepreneurship.
Okay. Awesome. And get a book from Bailey. Thank you. Okay, Bailey, if you'll show us the first slide, I want to just summarize briefly a few things that Dan said that I think are really important. Remember, Dan talked about how there's only 12 notes on a piano keyboard, and he said that everyone plays those same notes. The same songwriters, the same musicians use all the same notes, but thousands of these songs that are written never become hits, but some of them do become hits. And he said the reason for that is you find a strong purpose in your life, something you're kind of excited about, something you feel is important, something that'll give you the passion and the tenacity to persist and keep going because you really believe in what you're doing and you like what you're doing. And then you have to have imagination and say, how can we better solve this problem? There's got to be a different way to do this. There's got to be a different solution. And then you use creativity to figure out what steps you can take to do something different than no one else has done. And so this reminded me of an experience I just had this summer. I spent a week in Cusco, Peru. Next slide, please. And every restaurant we went to, we had a band playing Peruvian music from the Andes. And every band looked like this. And every band played the exact same songs. They played the same 12 notes and the same 12 songs. And I started hearing people in the restaurant saying, oh, not another Peruvian band. We can't talk when Peruvian bands are playing. And they would always try to sell their CDs afterwards, and I didn't see anybody buying a CD ever until this guy. So notice how he's wearing denim shirts. The guy's pounding on a box behind him. He's dancing around. This was Marco. And Marco put on a phenomenal show, the best I have ever seen, and he turned Peruvian music into Peruvian rock and roll. And when he was finished, people lined up. People were dancing in the restaurant and shouting and laughing, and people lined up to buy his CD. It was $20, and I gave him $30, and I've now worn it out since I've been home. But I want to play a 1-minute version of what he did that night, okay? Okay, that's Marco. So I talked to the tour guide and I said, this guy is absolutely unbelievable. And he said, yes, Marco has been doing this all throughout Peru for years and years and years, and he brings it every night. That was his answer. He brings it every night. Okay? So we all have the same 12 notes. Last slide. We all have access to the same tools. You don't need any special skills. You don't need any kind of magic. You just have to find something you're excited about, and then you have to figure it out. It was Dan Clark's message. You have to just figure it out, and that's entrepreneurship. It applies to a for-profit business, a non-profit business, a school, a church. It applies to your life. You find things you feel good about, you're excited about. You start using your imagination to solve problems, and then you just figure things out, okay? So these skills that we're learning in this class, you will be able to apply them in anything that you do throughout your life. So we're thrilled you're in the class. Okay, Bailey's going to introduce Danielle Nielson. We're very excited she's here. She's been very generous to come and spend time with us. She has an amazing story, and her husband, Ken, has joined her tonight as well. So, Bailey?
Okay, so tonight we have another amazing entrepreneur visiting us today. And shortly after graduating from Utah State, she started selling cell phones with her brother. From there, she wasn't afraid to take risks, and she surrounded herself with people that she could trust. And this led to incredible growth. And by incredible growth, I mean 357 stores in 33 states and $500 million in revenue. So needless to say, we're pretty lucky to have Danielle Nielson with us tonight. So please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Bailey, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here tonight, and I want to thank the administration at Huntsman School for asking me to do this. Mike, when I was here in the fall, he asked if I would do this, and I think you told me there would be about 70 people here, and there's about 370, maybe 400, so I found that out today. But super excited, couldn't be more thrilled to be here to kind of tell you a little bit about my path, kind of where I started, where I grew up, kind of how that gave me an internal passion of what I wanted to do. And then tell you a little bit about Diamond Wireless and how we started, where that path took us, and then kind of where we ended in 2016. So again, thank you for having me. I'll have a few slides that I'm going to go through. But just to kind of go over this really quick, again, I'm going to do a quick little background of, where I grew up, timeline of Diamond Wireless. I'll probably spend most of my time talking about our timeline and what we did and how we got to where we were. Quick company snapshot. We'll talk a little bit about corporate office and how important the administrative operational side of the business was. And then kind of the four things that I thought were the key pillars of why we had such great growth over the 16 years that we were in business. So quick background on myself. As an entrepreneur, and I think most of us, I think we're always intrigued in hearing people's stories. I know that I am. I like to hear where people were raised and, where they came from and then how they started something and then how they built that. So I was raised in Salt Lake City. I went to Brighton High School. And then I have 4 siblings. 2 older brothers, a younger sister. We talked a little bit about my brother, Troy. He's my second brother, so we were the 2 middle kids. So Troy and I, let's just go back to Salt Lake. So grew up in Salt Lake, Brighton High School. I was, what's the word I'm looking for? So I grew up around entrepreneurs, let's say that. So my grandfather, my dad's dad, was an entrepreneur, and he was pretty successful. So I got to see some success. My dad tried to go out and do the same thing that my grandfather did and tried a couple of different businesses, and they failed. He didn't have a ton of success in the businesses that he tried. Not that he didn't try, they just didn't work out. That happened. So growing up, my family struggled financially. We didn't have a whole lot. I remember being young and going school shopping and then having to put everything on layaway. Back then, before credit cards, it was layaway, and then my parents had to go and buy that down before I could take the clothes home. So I think growing up, there was this part of me that saw success from Grandpa, but then there was also this drive of, okay, so there's also, being an entrepreneur can be hard, and there can be struggles, and then that can also be a financial burden on the family. So at 16, had to get a job, worked for a sandwich shop, cleaners, and then I got this opportunity to work for this company called AirTouch Paging. So back then, before we had cell phones, there were pagers. And my brother Troy was working in their corporate office in customer service, and I was selling pagers in the mall. So I had a sales position. But great job, did that for the last couple of years of high school. Great company to work for. There was a gal there named Karen Glenn, who was the one that hired both Troy and I, kind of ran the program. We had a great relationship with her. Well, I left AirTouch when I decided to come up here to Utah State to go to school. So I venture up here, enroll in the business program because I know that I want to own my own business at some point. I don't know what, and I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but I want to learn more about business. So joined business, and then I also joined the Chi Omega sorority. So kind of with these two compiled, I had this great university experience. I loved the business school, and then on the flip side, I was able to get some leadership responsibilities within Chi Omega. I was the treasurer for 1 year, and then I became the president. And I think it was at that time, while I was having this experience at school, and and I was very involved with the Chi Omega sorority and what we were doing there, that I found that this leadership was interesting to me. So I kind of began dialing in on, okay, I know I like leadership and I know I like business, but I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this. I also had an advisor at Chi Omega. Her name's Patty Holofia. Some of you may know her, but she's worked here at, here at Utah State. I think she just retired, but she was here for a long time. She was our advisor, and she was a mentor to me. I think at the age I was and the time, there weren't a lot of women that I was surrounded with that had both career and family. And that was something I knew that I wanted, but I wasn't really surrounded with that. So Patty was this mentor to me that had that. She had a family, she had a career, and she had a lot of great advice. So she was someone that, again, kind of infused leadership and career and family all in one for me. So I graduated from Utah State in 1999, moved back to Salt Lake, and was trying to figure out, what do I want to do? So I started job interviewing and going through that whole process. While I was at school, my dad and my brother both had became small partners in a business called Diamond Auto Glass. And they were auto repair for windshields, rock chips, that kind of thing. And so while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I decided to go work at Diamond Auto Glass with my dad and brother. So Troy and I are hanging out one day, and we're like, hey, we should see if the main owner wants to try selling cell phones. We've got this connection with Karen over at AirTouch Paging, and they've got these predictive dialers, which is a telemarketing system where they're telemarketing customers. And we thought, maybe he'd let us try selling cell phones through this telemarketing process. Cell phones are just becoming affordable for people, and it's kind of this new rage, right? So we go to the owner, and he says, okay, I'll let you guys try it. So we said, great. So Troy and I built this little plan. We've got our telemarketers in place. We put a little customer service desk together, and we started cold calling people. Come in, we'll give you a free cell phone if you sign a 2-year contract with us, and we'll get you on your way. People started to come in. It was actually working. So we did that for about 4 or 5 months, and the main owner came back and said, this whole cell phone thing isn't what we're good at. It's not what we do, so I want you guys to shut it down. Troy and I were like, really? Shut it down? Like, it's going well, we have customers in, we've got profit coming in, there's revenue. Like, why would you want to shut it down? It's just not our thing. So Troy and I remember we laughed, we were kind of feeling down, and we went to the side. I think we went to lunch or something, and we were like, what should we do? And we both just looked at each other and said, let's just go do it on our own. We've already kind of tested it. We were fortunate. We tested it kind of within their environment, and it was working. But he didn't want to do it. Troy's a small owner, so we said, let's go do it. So March of 2000, so about 8 or 9 months after I had graduated, we decided to go out and start this business. So for Troy's small percentage of this ownership that he had, got a predictive dialer. So we were like, perfect, we're going to telemarket, we're going to do the same thing, telemarket, bring customers in, start selling phones. We created Diamond Wireless because we were Diamond Cellular at Diamond Auto Glass, but we just decided to move it over. So that's kind of where the name Diamond came from. So we quickly got things in place. We've got, our rent, we've got our inventory, we've got employees, and we're telemarketing cell phones. Well, quickly after, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months, we're like, we're not making enough money. Everything that we're making, the profit's going right back into the business, and it's not working. So what do we do? Let's try and sell something else. So satellites. So we started selling satellites, telemarketing customers, trying to set them up on, satellite service. Well, again, another month or two goes by, and we're still not making it. Ends aren't meeting, and we're starting to lose money, and we're not sure what to do. So we reach out to Dad, and he is kind of excited about our business, but isn't sure where it's going, but says, what if I bring in another predictive dialer, and I leave Diamond Auto Glass and come join you guys, bring in a little bit of capital. And to kind of go back a little bit, we didn't start with a lot. A predictive dialer, and we had, I would say probably about maybe $30,000 cash that we had just brought in together on our own. So I was able to have a little bit of money that my grandfather had given me, $15,000 when I turned 21. I held on to that, and I took that whole bit of money that he gave me and put it into Diamond Wireless, not knowing what we were doing. So we get Dad involved. He brings in a little bit more money just to help us stay afloat for a couple more months. And so we did that, and we're struggling. And at this point, it's either throw the hands up and walk away and go get jobs, or we pivot and try and find something different to do. And we're all sitting around talking, and someone said, why don't we go into retail? Because at this point, we're calling people, they're coming to find us in our office space. Well, let's do something different. What do you think? So we said, this is our only option. I think right now, we'll try this and then see how it goes. So we went to Fashion Place Mall down in Salt Lake, and we were able to negotiate a lease with the mall. Still a little nervous because we don't have a lot of capital, hardly any. We're not making any money at this point, but we know that we have to do something, or else this whole thing's going to die. So we go in, and the only space that they have available in the mall that we could afford was a small little, I think it was maybe 600 square feet, location in the middle of the food court. And we were like, that's all you have? Well, it's all we can afford. So we say, okay, let's go for it. So we go in, and we're painting walls, we're putting up slat wall, we're, cleaning the floors up, and we're in between Sbarro Pizza and the Japanese food place. And we're just like, what are we doing? Is this going to work? But I'll never forget, we opened those doors. So at this point, it's the end of September. So we started in March, telemarketed, it didn't work, and now we're at the end of September. And our crazy location ended up sticking out like a sore thumb, and everyone was interested in what we were doing and selling. So here they were in the food court eating their lunch or dinner or hanging out, and then they were drawn to us. So we instantly started selling phones, and it was incredible. So here we are working open to close. We're selling phones. It's just the two of us. Our dad is great. He's kind of passive. I remember he'd sit in the food court and just watch us. Like, hey, Dad. But so there we are. Just, we're hustling. We're selling phones like crazy, filling out contracts, getting people out the door. And so here is where we kind of begin. So that's the lead up of, some struggles and what were we going to do? And this pivot happens. We're in retail and it's working. And we thought, okay, it's working quick. What do we do? Let's go open up a couple more locations quick. So by the end of that year, a couple months later, we had 2 more locations. So now at this point, we have 3 locations. We're in, I think, Valley Fair, Contwood, and Fashion Place. And it's exciting. We're going out. We're getting employees. We're still working crazy hours. Mall hours are open every day of the week. But it's going well. We're not quite profitable. Well, any profit that we're making at this point, we're still infusing back into the business. We're not taking anything out. We're living off of credit cards. And we're just doing what's best for the business. So we've got these couple of locations open. And here on the timeline, so you see here we had our first store that we opened, but then the interesting thing, which was another kind of pivot in our business and a decision that we had to make, was when we first started selling in the retail, we decided to go out and sell 3 carriers. So we were selling Verizon, and I'll backtrack a little bit. It was AirTouch paging, and that's how we got our initial agent contract, was because of Karen Glenn, the relationship that we had from when we both worked for her when we were younger. So Karen gives us this contract, this agent contract with Verizon. And then we're selling T-Mobile and a company called MCI WorldCom. So all 3 of these companies, and it was very standard in the industry at this point that everyone was a multi-carrier. They were selling multiple carriers. Well, we have 3 locations, and all of a sudden we're like, okay, this is kind of hard to operate. Our inventory costs are really high because we have to have inventory for all 3 carriers. We have to train our employees, 3 different carriers, and all the different phones and products that came along with each of those carriers. So we quickly said, how do we simplify this? Because this is kind of hard to manage, and then it's also taking a lot of our profits because we've got all this inventory. So we thought, well, we're going to go approach all 3 carriers and ask them if they'll give us an exclusive deal. No one else is doing it. If we go exclusive with you, will you pay us more? Our commissions are coming in from them, and they're standard because everyone's a multi-carrier. But if we're different, if we go exclusive and just sell you, will you do anything for us? All 3 of them came back with a proposal, all more than what we were making in commissions at the time, better than what they normally were. So at this point, we had to kind of make a decision. What are we going to do? MCI WorldCom came in at the highest commissions, which is where all of our revenue is coming from. It's all coming in from commissions from the carriers. T-Mobile and then Verizon was 3rd place. So we sat around and we talked, and what are we going to do? Dad really liked MCI WorldCom because they had the most, they came in the highest. They are going to pay us the most. T-Mobile was good, and then Verizon was low. But Troy and I went back and forth, and we just said, Verizon is the partner for us. Their customer service is incredible. The customer experience for our customers is the best. And we love their network. They have this big group, this AirTouch, that formed with all these CDMA companies across the country, and then they changed their name to Verizon. So Verizon happened about that time in 2000, 2001. But we felt like they were the best partner for us. Not to mention this relationship that we had with Karen Glenn, the one that helped us get into the business. So we decided at that point, sorry, Dad, to go with Verizon. And it was the best decision that we made, especially early on. Has anyone heard of MCI WorldCom? No, they're not around anymore. If we would have picked MCI WorldCom, we don't know what would have happened. We might have been able to switch carriers, but that was a key decision for us. But it was more important to team up and partner with someone that we trusted the product and service that they were giving, so that we could in turn give that same experience to our customers. So once we got so then we signed our first exclusive West area contract. Verizon operated in 4 different areas. They had the West area, South, East, Midwest. So you had to have a certain contract for that area that you were doing business in. So we got our first exclusive contract. So once we got a couple more stores open in Utah, so we're at 5 or 6 locations in Utah. We stayed there for 2 years. Really kind of wanted to protect we really wanted to understand our model. What did we have? It was working. We were mall-based. That's kind of by design. We wanted to make sure we had good people in place. We had hired some really incredibly and talented people in that first year to help us manage these stores that we were opening. Fast forward a couple of years, and down the road, they became our executive team. So we started opening new locations, and then we thought, okay, we've got it kind of down. We understand our model. We understand what we have. We need good people, knowledgeable people. We have a simplified concept. Can we now take this outside of the state of Utah? So that was our next step. Let's go outside of the state of Utah. So we reached out to mall landlords. We've got a couple of deals, 2 in Colorado, 2 in Arizona locations. So I said, well, the only way this is going to work is if one of us goes. I don't want to just send an employee to go do this. We've got to make sure that this works. So I'd been married for about 6 months. Went home to Kent. We have 4 locations, 2 in Colorado, 2 in Arizona. And I go home and I say, hey, you want to quit your job and join the business and move to Colorado? He said yes. He's such a strong, supportive husband I love. So he quit his job. And 2 weeks later, we were moving to Colorado to open up those locations because we wanted to make sure that we were open before Black Friday, which was the biggest day of the year. So what we did is we found that, we took this concept, it's kiosks in malls, and then we take them and we start plopping them in different areas around, these surrounding states that we still felt like we were close enough to Utah. And we had employees that picked up and moved with us. They were willing to leave Utah and leave family and friends for the opportunity for career advancement by moving out to these states with us, which kind of blew my mind, but they wanted to and they were excited and they did it. So we had one of our executives that ended up going down to Arizona, and for the next couple, or probably year, we just started opening up new locations in those states. There were more malls that gave us more opportunity. There was now more growth opportunity for employees. So we just started ramping up. We kind of found our groove. We found this foundation of what worked, which was a simple concept, a great partnership, Verizon, and then the people. We had people that were willing to pick up and move to be a part of our growth. So as we start growing, in 2003, we've got 17 locations. We even went to Hawaii. We had some employees. They didn't complain about moving to Hawaii. So Hawaii, and then we just started organically growing. And it was pretty incredible how fast it happened. So by 2004, we're probably close to the 10 million in revenue, which is pretty incredible. I met with some of the MBA students earlier today, and they asked the question, well, did you go out and have to raise extra capital to put into these locations to expand? We didn't. We were able to internally fund our growth with the help of Verizon. Per our contract, they gave us MDF, Market Development Funds, to help our store openings. And because we were doing kiosks, they were small 10 by 10 little stores, not a full build out of 1,000 square foot inline store. So with their money and then our internal funds, we were able to just organically grow on our own without having to go out and raise some capital. So then we get into 2006. And now we're in Texas and New Mexico and California. And then there's this Canon Wireless in the Pacific Northwest, company that we were excited about. They had 14 locations. We weren't in P&W. They were actually friends of ours that we taught the business, let them go up to the Pacific Northwest. So we kind of had an agreement that we won't go into your territory. Well, they realized that they weren't great operators, and they didn't really, I think because they were operating from Utah and they were up in the Pacific Northwest, it just wasn't working out. So this opportunity came to now buy their business. So here we were ready to come and buy Canon Wireless, and then we could get our territory and our distribution into the Pacific Northwest. About that time, we got approached by a small boutique venture capitalist firm out of California. We weren't looking to sell, and we weren't openly in the market. They approached us, and as we started to talk to them, and then we had this acquisition that we wanted to do of Canon Wireless in the Pacific Northwest, it just started to kind of come together, and some decisions were made to sell a portion of the business and simultaneously acquire Canon Wireless. So Diamond Wireless is, before 2006, 100% owned collectively by our families. And then in 2006, we do a private equity deal, and it went a 50-50 split. Plus we acquired. So some might ask, why did you decide to do that? I think that for us, we were young in the industry. We didn't know where the industry was going. There are always risks involved in any business, and I think that that was part of the reason why we decided to sell a portion of the business. Take a little bit of money off the table financially, help offset some of that, but then still have 50% of the business, so still be able to run and manage it like we wanted to. So that was kind of the decision that we made there at that point. And then we just started growing again. So they're not infusing any money, the private equity. So we're still growing organically and through acquisition on our own with the internal funds that we're bringing in. That's one thing that we always did. We always focused on business first. What is the best decision for the business? We could have easily, on the personal side, said, we'll really get rewarded if we decide to do this. But we always did what was best for the business, and what was best for the business was to continue the growth, because it was creating career opportunities and employee engagement, and the relationships that we were starting to build in the industry as we grew. We just knew that as long as we focused on business and doing what was best for the business, we were able to continue that growth. So, it's 2006, we're at 48 locations. We signed another premium retailer contract. We had to sign new contracts every 4 or 5 years. Acquired a company in California. And then 2009, the industry started to have a little bit of a shift, and our margins started to get compressed. There was more saturation in the market, and Verizon came back, and they started to really start changing our commission structure, which again was the majority of our revenue that was coming in. So we had, again, another kind of a decision to make. What do we do? Our profits are slimming down, and we need to make some changes. So we can either cut payroll, we can cut expenses, or we can go out, innovate, and try and find some new revenue streams. And I'll tell you, that's something that we always did. We always went out to find new ways to bring in revenue rather than cutting costs or cutting payroll. It was never even an option. We never really talked about it. So at this point, we decided, hey, we have an opportunity, again, through some connections and people that we had talked to start our own protection program. So we founded Diamond Wireless protection. So what we did is we started selling our own warranty plan to our customers. We have a lot of customers coming through the door, and they can go with the Shurion, which most of you probably have heard of or maybe already know or have that on your plans, or you can go with DWP. And there were a couple different ways that you could have structured DWP, or we could have. And it was just have that access to the customer so that they were paying a monthly fee, and then you pass that off to the insurance company that kind of was the parent company of what we were doing with DWP. So you'd make a small little profit on the DWP customers. Or you could be fully insured and be the company to process the claims, and that's what we decided to do. So what we did is we built a customer service department of 50 employees, and we started doing our own customer service on our DWP customers and claims. So if you broke your phone or something happened to it, you could actually go into our store. We'd give you a new phone on the spot, and then you would send your phone back in or give it to the employee, and we'd take care of you. So this was a way for us to bring in new revenue streams without having to rely on Verizon. This ended up being a big piece of our business as the years went on. I'll go into it a little bit more in a minute, but we had, at the end, we had over 300,000 customers on reoccurring billing through DWP, which was a big chunk of the revenue that was coming in. So here we are. We've got, now we're at 147 locations. 34 of them have been through acquisition, the rest organic growth, and private equity in California. We don't talk to them much, but they decide we need our exit. You know, of course they go into these and they have an exit strategy, 3 to 4 or 5 years, depending on the business. So they came to us and said, okay, we want to take the company to market, and we want to have our exit strategy to leave the business. So we said, okay, that makes sense. That's kind of what we agreed to in the beginning, so let's go for it. So work with investment bankers, put a big booklet together, and then we went and did a bunch of management presentations. Our executive team explaining to a bunch of different private equity, why Diamond Wireless. So through this process, we ran across a company called Glentel. They were a family-owned business out of Canada, and they did the exact same thing we did, but in Canada. So they had, I think at the time, they maybe had 300, 350 locations. They were retail, based in malls. They were multi-carriers, so they sold the 2 biggest carriers in Canada. But they were looking to diverse their portfolio, so they thought, why not go to the United States? So we ended up doing a deal with Glentel, which was just a good fit for us. They had the values of employees and that they were the most important. They wanted to make sure that they were building relationships and keeping the service for our customers intact. They didn't want to grow too fast if we didn't need to, but we're there to support if we wanted to grow too fast. So it was really an incredible strategic partnership that we had. So after that, they were very good about letting us continue to operate the business. But at this point, they own 81.5% of the business, the majority of Diamond Wireless. Private equity from California exits. Our dad retired, he exited. And then Kent and I and Troy retained the remaining minority shares. So, good relationship, great people, and we just start plugging away. So then again, we start going through additional organic growth, and we're just growing internally. 2012, we're close to $270 million in revenue. And then we get to our 200th store in 2013. And just before that, Well, actually, I'm going to go back to this big one, the yellow one. So up there it says signed Verizon national contract. So I told you earlier that Verizon they basically ran 4 different businesses within their business. So you had a West area contract, and then we were in the South and Texas and a South area contract. So we were operating our business off of 2 different contracts, 2 different commission structures from Verizon, same company, but totally different commission structures. So it was pretty hard to, again, manage the business based off of 2 different structures. And so we got a call that National Verizon was forming a group. They wanted to include 6 agents across the country and make them premium national agents, that they would operate under one commission structure, and they allowed us to then go and distribute wherever we wanted to, as long as we have their approval. We always, on locations and growth, we always had to have their approval. But they invited us to be one of the 6. This was an incredible honor for us. There were a lot of agents out there, some that were maybe even bigger than us, but because of the way that we conducted business in an ethical, good way, they picked us and 5 others to form this group. So this kind of was a big jump for us. Now we were able to manage and operate our business under one contract, one commission structure, and we were able to open up stores, our growth. We could go anywhere. And we had the support of Verizon. Part of this group also included that we were able to, they were able to tell us the roadmap of what was coming. It's funny, in an industry like this, you're waiting on the edge of your seat Black Friday 2 days before, because you don't know what Verizon's going to put on their promotional calendar or set out for promotion on Black Friday. We can't even, we weren't able to plan because we didn't know what they were doing. They couldn't tell us until we became a Big 6 agent, a national agent, and they were able to disclose information to us leading up to those big holidays, which again helped us manage and operate our business. So, and there were some perks, I'll be honest. We got to go to the Super Bowl a couple of times, which is pretty cool. So there were some cool things about being in this group. And then it also allowed us to start relationships with our peers. There's 5 other Big 6 agents that we don't know because we're all kind of spread throughout the country, but all of a sudden we're being brought together by Verizon. So we start building relationships with these other dealers, and they're just like us. They started from scratch with one location, and now they're at 150, 200, 300 locations. And this is what's incredible about building a relationship. You just never know where those relationships are going to take you. So Big 6 is awesome. We're super excited about it. And then comes a couple of us in the Big 6 that decide, hey, let's form a buying group. Maybe with our buying power, with the 4 of us, the 4 biggest agents in the nation, what if we teamed up with a main distributor and we go to these OEMs and we try and get discounts on our phones? Because what's that going to do? It's going to increase our margins and profitability. So we formed this group with these other agents, and these OEMs were so excited for this group because of our buying power and what we could do and then what we could distribute. So we had Samsung and we had HTC that were all trying to get our business. They were pushing discounted prices on phones, on equipment, and in inventory so that we would push their product. So all of a sudden, that was another way for us to bring in more revenue because we were able to shrink some of our inventory. But that wouldn't have happened had we not been in Big 6, had we not had the relationships that we built in the Big 6 to then go ahead and form this group with 4 of us. So it's to be honest, it's hard to explain when we started with one store. I have to pinch myself, and I used to do it all the time. Like, I don't even know how this happened. Like, all of a sudden, we've got, 200 locations. We're national agent for Verizon. This is just so exciting. And we had so much going on, but at the same time, it was fun, and it was interesting, and we were creating jobs. So when we had this kind of point where like everything's kind of coming together, Verizon approaches us and says, hey, we've got 154 locations in the East Coast. And at the time, we're not in the East Coast. We're still west and south. We want you to take them over for us. Like, what? 154? That's almost doubling our store count. We're at 200. You want us to take on 154 locations? Yes. So what they're a kiosk inside BJ's Wholesale, which is just like a Costco or a Sam's Club. So they have found that it's too hard to manage and operate for them. But for someone like us, that's what we do. They wanted us to take those over. We didn't have to pay anything for them. They just wanted to give them to us. I know. They should have paid us because it was a lot of work. So this brought on a whole nother dynamic to our business. So we've got malls, we've got some strip malls, but this is a store within a store. So it's a different model, it's a different concept, it's something different than what we were used to. But we did some research, we started talking numbers, we start going through the whole thing, and we decide, okay, let's do it. So we sign a contract with Verizon, and we have 45 days to execute turning over 154 doors with no employees. 45 days. This is a whole story within itself. But what we did is we were able to go out to our field. We had great employees. We had manpower out there that were willing to, again, for opportunity, move. We went out and said, anyone willing to move to the East Coast? And we had people raising their hands, yes, 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 I want to move out there. I want to go. We love Diamond Wireless. We're excited about the opportunity. So we had 45 days, a very strategic plan on how we were going to execute this. And we had one night, well, it was 2 nights, 50 of it, or half, and then the other half to take over these 2 locations. Verizon terminated all their employees. Unfortunately, we would have taken them on, but because of legal reasons, they had to terminate. We went in and tried to save some of them. But 2 weeks before, we went out and we just started hiring people. We were interviewing. We were doing everything we could to get teams of people. And then we had about 50 employees from the West and South Coast that moved to the East Coast. They didn't even go. We didn't send them there to check it out to see if they liked it. They kind of said, oh, I think this would be a great place to live. Well, maybe I'll try that. It was incredible. I don't know how, I don't know why, but they did it. They were excited. They wanted to be a part of it. And the culture that we built within Diamond Wireless was exactly that. We're going to do this together. We're going to support you guys are going to support us, and we're going to go out and we're going to do this as a team. So in 2013, August of 2013, we went out. We had about 50 people that moved out there permanently. And we had about 100 to 150 that went out there temporarily for 4 to 6 weeks. So mind you, we had 150 people in the West and South that left, which kind of left these markets less people. So that meant that everyone over here had to kind of step up to help make this happen. So they go over there for 4 to 6 weeks, and we did it. And it was incredible, and it was almost seamless. But the next day, we were selling phones, working with customers, training the new employees that we had hired, but we executed. 154-door takeover within a 45-day period and an overnight takeover. So that was a really big deal for all of us, especially the executive team. Those were big decisions that we had to make. Are we ready? Can we take on almost double our store count overnight? Can we do this? And as a team, there was a lot of discussion. I remember at one point someone said, okay, raise your hand if you think this is a good idea. And we were all like, because it's a big deal, doubling the locations. But we all agreed that we could do it, we could execute it, and we were the team to do it. And we did do it. So that was pretty incredible. So kind of wrapping up the timeline of Diamond. We've got 157 locations, about 2,000 employees. I told you earlier there was a majority share buyout at 81% Glentel. They were approached by the number one carrier in Canada to buy their distribution, to buy their business. That meant that if wireless company buys Glentel, then all of a sudden all the subsidiaries under Glentel, we're not sure what's going to happen with our business. So what we did was we kind of had to patiently wait, which was hard. Patiently wait for Bell, and then another carrier came in, Bell and Rogers came in to buy Glentel. So we kind of had to wait to see what they wanted to do with Diamond Wireless and the other subsidiaries. They had some in Australia. They had another one in the United States. And in May of 2015, they came back and said, okay, the deal is closed. We have now purchased Glentel. They have exited it completely. They got an incredible deal, something that you couldn't walk away from, and that we said, we don't blame you. You have to say yes to that. They were a family-owned business. I think it was really hard for them to walk away from it as well. But the deal was so good they couldn't pass it up. So May of 2015, we were informed that Diamond Wireless would go on the market. So that was hard. We weren't ready for Diamond Wireless to go. We had started it. It was our baby from scratch. When you're an entrepreneur, that's something that I've realized over time too. No one will be as passionate about the business as you. No one. You will have people, and we had incredible people that loved the business, that loved Diamond Wireless, loved working, but the passion and the love that you have for starting something from scratch and then building it, it's an incredible feeling. So the next year was pretty tough. We're trying to maintain culture and our people and trying to keep that intact. But at the same time, we know that the business is going to be sold, and we don't know where that path is going to lead because the majority shareholders kind of have control over that. So we kind of went back and forth. We tried to go out and raise some money to buy a portion of it back. With the evaluations that were in place, we didn't have enough to buy the whole thing, but we thought if we could break some of it off and keep part of it. But really, at the end, it just didn't work out. And so in September of 2016, Diamond Wireless was acquired by the number one Verizon agent in the country. So we felt like we passed it on to, someone that had this, we hoped that had the same ideals and integrity that we did. I think some people are still there and doing really well, and others have left because it wasn't the same as Diamond Wireless, and that they've left otherwise. But so this is kind of the path of what we took. We went from one little location, one retail location, lots of some pivots and turns and some hard times, but then finding other ways to bring in revenue. That's kind of the timeline of Diamond. So I just want to kind of just go through a few more things that I think are interesting about the company and what we did, and then why I think we were successful. So this is, again, just a quick snapshot. We were in business for 16 years, started in 2000. some of you, if you've looked into Diamond Wireless, there are some reports that say 99. I don't know why it says that, but 2000, we were operating in 33 states. We had 357 locations, almost 2,000 employees. And then this was more of a 15 revenue number, but we were just right. We hovered right around the $500 million in revenue, which was pretty exciting. So our corporate office, you cannot have an infrastructure of sales and growth without an incredible team on the back end. And we really did have an incredible team. So I talked about some of the employees that we hired early on within the first year. Our executive team consisted of 9 of us, and everyone except for one, the CFO, we brought him in 2006, but everyone else started with us within the first year that we started the business. They grew the business with us, and they were as dedicated as we were to making the business successful, and they became our executive team. But we have a lot of these too that also became our directors and people that started from that first year that we were in business. But you have to have this. So just, I kind of wanted to tell you my thoughts on why I think that we were successful and the highlights, kind of the 4 pillars that we had. Business development, relationships, strategic partners, maximizing profitability, employee relations, and career development. But the business model and business development, that was a huge piece of the business. Early on, Kent, Troy, and I, we were involved in everything that happened. We were small enough. We were opening up, our 3rd location, our 4th or 5th. We went out. We found the location. We worked with the malls together. We went through the lease. We all did that together, and we found employees. So we were involved, very hands-on, all of us. As you grow, you really have to almost break off and to have different categories of who's running what. So for Troy, Kent, and I, what we did is Kent took over all of business development for the business. So you had a team of people that were just working on the business development, the growth of our business, and analyzing our models. We had a couple different models, and then organically and by growing organically and by M&A. So Troy kind of took on that whole sales side of the business, the relationship with Verizon, and making sure that everything that we were doing and the contracts that we had in place were all intact. Working with the 360 group. So he really took on that. And then I took on the employees, the training, the culture, the benefits, HR, all of that encompassed employees. I was there to kind of make sure all of that was flow and intact. So when we talk about business development for us, we really had to make sure we understood our model. I talked a lot about it. We had a simplified process, which was just Verizon. We had to make sure that our employees were knowledgeable in what they were selling. Something that we did continually was to make sure that our employees had the tools that they needed to be successful. We put a program together called Diamond University that we didn't stop after their new hire or just at their management position did we train them, but we were continually training our employees to make sure that they were successful in what they were doing. So with that, we had to also make sure that the models that we had, so we had inline stores, that's just a quick little snapshot. We had our kiosks, which was originally where we started. Then we went to strip malls, and then our BJ's kiosks. So we had to really understand as we grew what made most sense. Early on, malls were the way to go. We paid high rents, but we had high traffic. We had a lot of customers, so it made sense to pay more. As we got bigger, it didn't make sense as much. So it made more sense to go into a strip mall where it was a destination location for customers to come in. They knew exactly what they wanted. We had more display space. So that was important. So business development, our growth, understanding what we were doing, understanding the industry. There's so much entailed in the business development. I was talking to Kent, and you just can't even start to put it up. But for us, it really was understanding our models that we had and the growth strategy. The relationships and strategic partners, again, are were such a big piece. If I go back to our timeline and some of the success that we had, it became, it was because of a relationship that we had with someone. We got an agent contract because we worked for a gal when we were at AirTouch paging. So, but without our relationship with her, I don't know that we would have been able to get an agent contract. And then as we grew, we started making sure that these relationships that we had with people, we made sure that they were good, solid relationships. You just never know when you build a relationship with someone how that might play into your success. So then we've got Ingram Micro, that's who was the distributor for our 360 group. And then, of course, all of these OEMs and manufacturers that we had fantastic relationships with. And then here, 360, I've talked a little bit about this, but the 4 different companies that were involved with that, and then the buying power that we had when we formed this group. So maximizing profitability, I've talked a lot about that too, just finding different revenue streams if you need to. I think that the thing in business is you've got to be resilient and adapt to change. Because although we were with Verizon for 16 years, there was a lot of change that happened, and we had to react quick, but make sound decisions. So I think most businesses would probably say the same thing. There are going to be some challenges, but you've got to be able to react quick and adapt. If we wouldn't have adapted to some of these changes, we probably would have failed at some point. And we actually saw a lot of agents out there that didn't survive because they couldn't adapt to the changes that were happening in the industry. So being resilient, adapting to change. And then again, maximizing that profitability wherever you can, if you can find those different revenue streams. And then the last thing for us, and it's the thing I will always talk about, is our people. Our entire business success, it wasn't because Troy and I opened up that first location. Did we have an idea and were we in the right place at the right time? We were. But we would never have been able to have the success that we did without the incredible people that we had. But we made sure from day one, it wasn't something that we sat down and talked about like, well, we should have this great culture and we should make it fun and we should make it a good working environment. But from day one, that's just who we were and that's what we wanted to have happen. We wanted people to enjoy coming to work. We wanted them to have a good working environment, and we wanted to have them feel like they're part of a family. So these are our core, core purpose, our mission, our core values. The thing that I love is that we always, first and foremost, wanted to make sure we had a world-class experience for our customers and our employees. At the end of the day, we couldn't be in those stores anymore. We couldn't be the ones talking and engaging with the customers. We had to make sure that the employees were doing what we wanted them to do. But the only way you can do that is to give them the tools, to give them the education. And then on top of that, we rewarded them. Early on, we started programs where we would take them on trips, or we would taking them to a dinner and just let them engage with each other made a world of difference. And as we got bigger, we were able to do things like a President's Club. We started that in 2007, where our top sales associates and leadership got to come on a President's Club trip, which is always in a tropical area. Mexico or Costa Rica or somewhere fun. And without fail, at all of those occasions, I had someone come up to me and say, this is the first time I've ever been on an airplane, or this is the first time I've ever even left my state. So we were giving experiences to employees that they maybe wouldn't have had otherwise. We did river rafting trips. We took them to theme parks. We just really tried to give back to them again, we could have made the decision we could have kept that money. That could have been money that we could have put in our pocket or, used it for other parts of the business. But what we felt was most important was to reward, recognize, and take care of our employees. And so our growth, our strategy, although we didn't sit down and talk about it, we knew the success came from the employees and how we treated them. And don't get me wrong, it was hard sometimes, especially you're operating in 33 states. You have 2,000 employees, and I'm sure not everyone loved Diamond Wireless, but there were a lot that loved coming to work. They loved working for who they were working for. All of our growth, our promotions happened internally. I bet 95% of our leadership positions came from within. Very, very few did we go outside and bring someone in. But that was okay because that's what we felt like was the best thing for the business. And it really proved to be the best thing. So I think that the employees felt like we were doing our best to take care of them. And then at the end of the day, they were doing everything they could to do what was right when they were in their stores. The other thing that we did too that I love talking about is, two things. We did a leadership conference too, and we talk about giving employees the tools to be successful. We brought all of our management in to a big leadership summit. So the last one that we had was in Orlando, Florida. We had 450 management, all of our store managers, district managers, all of our leadership there, and we trained them. We went through all sorts of trainings, and we spent time with them. We took them to theme parks. But again, that interaction with those employees and with each other, they formed these relationships across the country. It was so cool to see, they maybe all worked in California at one point, but then they kind of spread out, but they got to come together at that big conference so that they could really interact. And those events were so fun and informational for us too, but that was also a time for us to reward them and train them. And because at the end of the day for us, it was giving them those tools to be successful. And then the last thing when it comes to employees, and that's what I get excited about. I love leadership. And the other thing about leadership too that I was going to say is when you're a leader, that I learned over time is that, and I think in a program like this is probably something that you're looking for. How do I become a leader, or how do I be a leader? I think one of the most powerful things is to empower the people around you. If you empower the people around you, you allow them to step out of their box or shine at what they're good at. I am not good at everything, I'll tell you that. But I surrounded myself with incredible people that I let them step up and shine where they needed to. So empowering those people, allowing them to even fail, because we fail sometimes, but then you teach them how to learn from those failures. So that's just something that I always lean on, and I saw a lot of success, and I had to teach a lot of people too that were in leadership positions. You can't hold on to everything. You've got to let it go, and you've got to let your team succeed. So the last thing, just as far as culture, something that we were really passionate about was Diamond Donates. It was a program. We always did a little bit of philanthropy and trying to give back to the communities. But as we got bigger, we really started to hone in on this Diamond Donates. And we did... we worked with some great organizations, and we did drives in our stores. So we were able to do like a 6-week drive for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And every customer that walked up, we'd ask if they would like to donate to the foundation. And they would, and it was incredible how much money we were able to raise just because of the connections that we had, or the people that were willing to donate a couple of dollars. And then we had people like Samsung that stepped in and said, we love what you're doing here. For every dollar you raise, we want to add $2 more. And we didn't ask them. They came to us. And that's the kind of stuff that we tried to create again within our culture and our company, which was we're something bigger than just selling phones. We're a family, and we're giving back, and we're doing everything we can to support our communities or those organizations that we hold dear to our hearts because we see what they're doing. So again, I will always go back to our success. Our number one success came through our employees, our leadership, our executive team. It was a great working environment. We had fun. We had a lot of headaches, but we got through those challenges and we moved on. So that is the story of Diamond Wireless. Thank you. Thanks. Well, thank you again for having me. I'm excited to see everyone's success as you go forward. And then I think we're going to maybe open it up to a couple of 2 or 3 questions. So if anyone has a question that they want to ask, I think do you want them to come up here, or maybe just run up over here if you have a question? No question? You had a question? Perfect. Thanks. Thanks for making the trek up here.
So if anyone's read like the Wall Street Journal recently, like in the last couple of years, they're like basically screaming retail is dead. And I know it's kind of like hard times for like malls and stuff like that. So how are you able to remain relevant even through 2013, acquiring more stores when people were closing all around the country?
Right. Yeah, good question. And we are hearing and seeing that, right? And malls are actually trying to kind of reinvent themselves, bringing in different kinds of concepts into the malls. What we found, I showed you our 4 different models that we had up here. We started out as a mall-based operator, but as things started to shift in the industry and in retail, we found that we were better off either in an inline store in the mall, which was still kind of tricky, but really our most profitable model was in a strip mall. So that destination location, the rent was cheaper, it just made more sense. So we were starting to shift our business model kind of out of the malls as well, because we did see the decrease in customers. So I think that being relevant, I think it depends on the industry and what you're doing. The thing that we saw, there are online purchases that people do with the phones, but we felt that there were still a lot of customers that wanted to come in and touch and feel a phone and to go through that contract service and answer all those questions. So in our industry, there's still a lot happening on the retail side. People are going into the stores. And I know that the businesses, the big 6 that are still plugging away out there are doing well. So, but I do see that this retail environment is starting to change. But from the wireless perspective, I think that they're going to be okay for a little bit. Thank you. Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you want to come up? Oh.
I mean, I'll just ask my question.
Okay.
So you had one business for so long and kind of you changed it throughout the time, but after that, did you have any projects that you're working on, or like what was the thing after that where you go, well, now do I go into retirement?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So we kind of decided to take a break for a little bit. So we sold the business September 2016, and for about a year after that, we just decided we needed to be home with our kids. We have 2 kids. I have an 11-year-old daughter, 8-year-old son, and we traveled a ton. We were gone a lot. So we really focused on family, and that became our priority. However, when you're an entrepreneur, you want to get back into something. So we just started kind of exploring some different ideas, and we have just partnered up with a company that's real small. They have one location. It's a small restaurant. It's called Protein Foundry. If you guys are ever in Salt Lake, go check us out. But so we're excited. So that's something that it's different. It's a different industry. And truthfully, we can't go back. We can't go back in that industry for a while. We've got a non-compete in place, so we're not allowed. So yeah, we're exploring a couple of other business opportunities. My husband's got another gig that's going on, but we enjoy building businesses. So we're excited to kind of explore where else can we help owners or people that are entrepreneurs that have come up with a good concept or a good product, but they don't know what to do after they see some success. So yeah, we're definitely out there kind of filling that out right now. Great question. Thank you.
So as you guys went from owning just one location to, was it 357, right?
Yeah.
What were some of like the personal growth and challenge things you guys saw as you, I don't know if you felt like you had to kind of grow with your business and yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, there was a lot of like personal growth. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. Oh, for sure. I sometimes sit back and go, I can't believe we did this, because you go into it with one store and you just put your all into it. You're there every day. But as we grew, I think that my own personal growth came from leadership. I'm a very I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to make sure it gets done, right? But I realized as we got bigger and we started to grow, the leadership was really the piece that I personally started to grow in, and becoming more aware of people and how to work with them, and everyone's got different personalities and skill sets, and how to find the right place for them. So that's where I feel like I got my most personal growth, was in the leadership realm. But then I also learned a ton on the business side. I mean, you've heard about, we had 3 different cells throughout that time. Like, going into that, I wouldn't have thought. In fact, we never sat down and said, are we going to have an exit strategy? That was never our intent. We just kind of started, and it started to snowball, and we've got this big business. But we learned a lot through those cells, and that's information that I never would have gained anywhere else. And there were only a few of us that dealt with that, the executive team. Other than that, no one else really sat through those meetings and those management presentations and built up the programs to go out and sell the business. So there were a lot of personal learning experiences. I mean, we went into it not knowing a whole lot, just kind of the passion for the business, for the industry, and then the people that we started to build. And then we learned a lot throughout the years. And what I'm hoping for is that I can now take all that information and we can infuse that into, the next businesses that we do going forward. So thanks. That's a great question.
Thank you, Danielle, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.